So I'm a recently retired member of the Baton Rouge Police Department. My name is John Dauthier. I retired after 21 years of service as a sergeant. Basically, to make a long story short, I was a member of the administration in the Internal Affairs Division when when he took over as chief. Within 8 or 9 months, I opted to exit the administration and requested to transfer to uniform patrol when it became very clear to me that the new administration under Chief Murphy Paul's leadership and then Sergeant Myron Daniels, commander of the Internal Affairs Division, brought what could only be described as a blatantly partial doctrine of enforcing the rules of the Baton Rouge Police Department. So since I couldn't change it, I wasn't going to be a part of it, and I asked to return to uniform patrol. It was almost immediately thereafter that I became the target suddenly of investigation after investigation after investigation because I spoke up about the reason I left, and I stand by those words today. So after 21 years of service and the third investigation launched into me in as many years, I decided to retire early after consulting with my family, my therapist, and I had no choice. I hated the decision, and even to this day, I wonder if I did the right thing. But the only way I could survive, my family could survive, was to leave that toxic environment. So I left the career I loved after 21 years because of the intense, unending, unfair scrutiny for daring to speak out against unfair practices that I personally observed.
So let's back up a little bit. For those of you guys who are joining us, the reason for him speaking up today is there was a press conference that was held yesterday by the Baton Rouge Police Department. And there were several allegations that were made against Sergeant Dauthier, and he has not been able to say his side of it. If you missed that press conference, we're going to try to back up just a little bit. I wish I had it for you, but I don't have a way for you to watch it because we were kicked out of that. But so we're going to take it one step at a time. Let's start with, you were accused of leaking information and using your work computer to basically look up information on a board member of the Municipal Fire and Police Civil Service Board. And you sit on that board, correct?
I did until this past Monday, but yes, during the time that they were referring to, I was an actual elected member to the board, elected by the members of the Baton Rouge Police Department.
So let's back up. How did it start? So you're a member of this board and you get a complaint?
Yeah, a citizen reached out to me and said that she had uncovered information that she believed may have made a particular member of the Municipal Fire and Police Civil Service Board ineligible to serve, and asked me as the elected representative for the department to investigate it.
So what happened?
So to cut to the chase, the allegation was that this citizen was concerned that perhaps this board member may have been convicted of a felony. So what I did was on May 31st of this year at 11:30 a.m., and there's a reason I'm giving you the date and the time, we'll get back to it. I walked into the clerk of court's office next door to the Baton Rouge Police Department on Airline Highway, and I accessed the public records under Clerk Connect and investigated, as any citizen can, the public records related to this particular board member. What I found astounded me with the vast number of police interactions, including 2 recent felony arrests that this board member had. I didn't find any evidence of any felony convictions, but the excessive number of police interactions that were available in the public record, I, as a citizen, printed those documents, paid for those documents, and provided those documents to the Baton Rouge Union of Police. The concern was that while this person may not have been ineligible, at least insofar as the information we had available at the time because of a felony conviction, he had so many interactions with the Baton Rouge Police Department, including 2 recent felony arrests, it brought into serious question, could this person be unbiased, sitting on a board that one of its main functions is to review police discipline actions? Could this person be unbiased? The Baton Rouge Union of Police representative that I spoke to agreed that this was a concern for the Baton Rouge Police Department, and the Baton Rouge Union of Police provided the documents that I paid for as a citizen, that any citizen could, to local media outlets, some of which who ran a story on it, including yourself, as I recall. The information that was placed into the public record by those media outlets was strictly related to the public records that are available in Clerk Connect at the Clerk of Court. No proprietary information was released. There was no proprietary information that only a police officer could get that was released. So when that was said yesterday, that was false. Deputy Chief Daniels knows it's false. And particularly I'm concerned and upset with the Internal Affairs Commander because he knows that it's false. In fact, on June 23rd of this year, just 3 days after this investigation was launched against me, he was given specific information. If this investigation, which you refused to tell me what it was about, had anything to do with the media reports on that particular board member, and there was some concern that I had violated some departmental rule, policy, or law, all he had to do was walk across the parking lot to the Clerk of Court's office. I gave him the date, the time, and the fact that I paid for the documents, and that he didn't have to chase his tail, for lack of a better term. They knew this information, and the Internal Affairs Commander stood quiet yesterday as Deputy Chief Daniels implied that I used departmental resources, proprietary information, and that I leaked that to the media.
They didn't imply it, they said it.
Yeah, he absolutely did. They know it's false. And thank you so much for this opportunity to address it. They have a bully pulpit. They can call a press conference anytime they want and say whatever they want. It's very rare that an employee or a retired employee has a chance to speak back against the allegations that they know are false. And I'm calling them out on it today, and specifically the Internal Affairs Commander who stood there and allowed that lie to be told.
Let me back up a little bit. Obviously, you are responding to the press conference yesterday, and I forgot the first question should have been your overall response to that press conference.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that I have to do this. This is not something I looked forward to. But what choice does a person have when allegations are thrown out against them in public that are false? Do I just go run and hide in the corner? So unfortunately, I have to do this. So let's be clear about that. But my overall reaction to this, I was absolutely shocked. Yesterday, 2 members of the Baton Rouge Police Department were arrested for serious felonies, and they held a press conference. And sandwiched between those 2 arrests that they addressed, they talked about a former officer, Billy Mattingly, who they terminated, and me. Billy Mattingly and me. These were personnel issues. Since when does the Baton Rouge Police Department talk publicly about personnel issues? Former Officer Mattingly was arrested in Denham Springs, off duty, not by the Baton Rouge Police Department, not while he was on duty, and the Baton Rouge Police Department terminated him. That was a personnel action. There was no reason. In fact, I'd be curious as who gave them the legal advice to speak publicly about a personnel action.
And let me back up. The reason you have intel on this is you served in internal affairs at Baton Rouge Police, correct?
Correct.
How long?
Nearly 3 years.
Okay, so you're a little familiar with how the process is supposed to work.
Very familiar.
Okay, continue.
So I guess to answer your question, I was absolutely stunned. It was a bizarre press conference. You had 2 officers arrested for serious felonies yesterday, and 50% of the conversation was about personnel matters with 2 officers instead of the officers who were arrested for these felonies. Yes, it was mentioned, but it was basically it was in passing. What wasn't mentioned, former officer Donald Steele was just recently indicted and fired. To this day, since Officer Steele was initially under investigation, I challenge you, go back, find one press release, one press conference, one statement made from the Baton Rouge Police Department about Officer Donald Steele, who faces up to 40 years in prison for second-degree kidnapping. And they didn't mention that yesterday, but they talked about me. They talked about Officer Mattingly. It was bizarre, to say the least.
You're also, the accusations against you, we've kind of already discussed the whole work computer issue. Let's talk about the conspiracy, and people have tried to label you as a disgruntled employee, saying this was all a conspiracy to catch the chief. Do you care to respond to that?
So sometimes you have to wonder how this stuff evolves. Let me talk about this alleged conspiracy. Approximately a year and a half ago, after a roll call, several of the guys that I work with and supervised were standing around talking. One of the officers was working extra duty either the night before or it was recently at that time. This officer told the group of us that while working extra duty at Churchill's Cigar Bar, he observed what he believed to be a heavily intoxicated chief of police, Chief Murphy Paul, come out of that bar and speak to him. As I recall him describing, when he first walked out, he stumbled and nearly fell. And he then described the chief getting into his vehicle and driving away. The officer's concern was he felt he should have done something, but what was he supposed to do? He was a young officer, just a few years on the job, and is the chief of police. So in that conversation, as his supervisor, I said to him, and I stand by it, if I was still there, if you face a situation like that, and I believe Chief Murphy Paul said it himself a couple of times yesterday at the press conference, no one is above the law. And I made the mention, if you find yourself in a situation like that again, whether it be Chief Murphy Paul, John Doe down the street, or the President of the United States, I'd be happy to come and assist you. I'd be happy to help you conduct that investigation. This was a single incident a year and a half ago. Some sort of way, apparently, this has been turned into there was some conspiracy to arrest the chief. No, I made a comment to a young officer who I supervised. If you find yourself in a situation like that, call me. I will help you with that investigation. And I stand by that.
Not only that, though, is that not a public safety issue with regardless who it is? If you are drunk and you are driving, that's a DWI. And it's not just you. You can cause wrecks for other people and kill other people, correct?
Well, of course.
So what did you do wrong?
Well, you'd have to ask the department because I have no idea. I stand by it. When I was a police officer, no matter who you were, no one is above the law, whether it be the chief of police or any person. If you're driving intoxicated, I would make that arrest. It's as simple as that. It was a simple issue. And let's talk about conspiracy. First of all, this was a year and a half ago. I spent nearly 30 years in law enforcement, and a large portion of that time I spent in homicide and cold case homicide. I was pretty decent at it. I don't need to conspire with anyone to make a DWI arrest. That's silly. For them to say that and to launch apparently what they said was a criminal investigation into that, really, this is what we're spending our time on? That I told an officer, if you see the chief of police driving intoxicated or whoever, and you feel uncomfortable as your supervisor, call me. I will assist you with that investigation or I will make that arrest. Yeah. Really, this is what we're spending our time and resources on? So it was bizarre to say the least.
Did you do anything criminal that your name was brought up in this press conference where others are accused of serious criminal violations, such as selling confidential information for thousands of dollars, and then another officer arrested was accused of kidnapping a squatter and then masturbating in front of her, and yours was all brought out in front of all of this. Or did you do anything criminal? Did you find anything that was criminal intent on your part or anything criminal charges?
Let me assure you of this. And I said it when it happened, when I was first placed on leave, but right before I retired. The investigation into me was an investigation in search of a crime. I can assure you, if there was any way that a criminal case could have been made against me, it would have been made. So absolutely not. And the fact that I was brought up with these other officers, as you just alluded to, is bizarre. But here's what it is, okay? I've been an outspoken critic of the administration. If you follow my Facebook page, it's my name, John Dauthier. Since I left, I haven't remained quiet. I've put out information that regarding disparate discipline. I've put out information, and I'm not going to stop supporting the men and women of the Baton Rouge Police Department. Those people are heroes. They're terrified of speaking out, and someone has to do it for them. Most people retire and go away, and I refuse to do that. So let me assure you that that's what this is about. I have to be discredited because of the information I'm bringing forward that is discrediting.
Is this just the department being vindictive? And I say the department, I should probably say specifically. Is this the Baton Rouge Police Chief Murphy Paul being vindictive against Sergeant John Dauthier?
I don't know what other conclusion you can come to. Let me say this. Let me tell you what happened yesterday. When they spoke about me the way they spoke about me, one of two things happened. Either they violated their own policy of not talking about an ongoing investigation because they clearly talked about me in great length, or the investigation is complete and part of it, I now have learned, was a criminal investigation, and they have, again, I don't know who would have given them this advice. You said that you investigated me for a crime but found no wrongdoing. Wow, that's a problem. If someone is investigated for a crime and there are reports written on that, let's say the department investigates you, Kieran Chawla, for some alleged violation of law, and a person were to go to the police department and say, I'd like to make a public records request for these reports related to this investigation. And you're not going to get that. They're not going to release that information because it's damning. If you're indicted for a crime, if you're charged with a crime, you have your day in court to defend yourself. It's very, very clear. It's very much in the law that you are not to release information about people you investigate that you ultimately aren't able to charge with a crime because it's defamatory on its face. On its face, it's defamatory. So whoever gave them this advice, I don't know. But that's all I'm going to say about that issue upon advice of counsel.
When did you find out what you allegedly did wrong?
Yesterday with everyone else. 2.5 months. And by the way, it appears that if you listen to the press conference, they've made conclusions, incorrect conclusions, about what I did or what I didn't do. No one's ever reached out to me for a statement. I've not been able to provide any information. What kind of investigation is this? I found out with everybody else yesterday.
Your internal affairs, you were internal affairs. What is the process supposed to be? If an officer is told you are under investigation,
Mm-hmm.
they came to your house, got everything. Walk
Mm-hmm.
us through that process and walk us through what happened with you.
Well, generally, what has always been the practice as long as I've been there, when you're placed on, and if a person's placed on administrative leave, first of all, that's supposed to be rare. It's in the past, it's been reserved for the worst of the worst, someone accused of a serious crime or who is under arrest. These folks apparently just use it willy-nilly to whoever they want to punish, because once you're on administrative leave, you can't work extra duty, you can't work overtime, you have to stay at your house, et cetera, et cetera. It's a form of punishment. So it's a scare tactic. It's exactly what it is. Cross us, and we'll open an investigation on you. We'll put you on leave, and it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you stress. So anyway, in my case, when they appeared at my house to take my stuff and place me on administrative leave, I insisted over and over and over for a reason I was being placed on leave. I was refused that information. Why was I under investigation? Wouldn't tell me. I didn't know until yesterday, for certain. I had suspicions, but I learned with everyone else yesterday what I'd been under investigation for the last 2.5 months.
What's wrong with that?
Well, and this is something that I sure hope the union will address in the next legislative session, with several other things that needs to be addressed. In state civil service law, this would be, it's not allowed. If you are placed under state civil service rules, if you are placed on administrative leave, first of all, the max they can do is 260 hours. These guys use it for years at a time, apparently. You've recently reported on at least one case of that. In state civil service law, it's a 260-hour max, and they have to tell you why you're being placed on administrative leave. There's no such requirement under Title 33 that applies to us. So that's how they're able to just abuse it. They'll tell you if they want to tell you, or not tell you if they want to tell you. So I hope the union will address that in the next legislative session. This administrative leave is being abused. You can't take someone's property right from them, which is their job, their right to earn money, their right to extra duty. And yes, these are rights. This is not me saying this. This is established jurisprudence. You can't take someone's property right from them and not even tell them why. That is such an overreach of government that it should not be allowed, but they do it because they can. So I'm hoping that's something that the union will push for change in the next legislative session, so these abuses can't continue.
They talked about Richmond Barrow, that the day of his internal affairs hearing, he ended up resigning, and so it's made to sound like in lieu of termination, which they kind of compared to you, that you also retired early. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, as I alluded to earlier, there's only so much a person can take, and make no mistake, and it's by design. They investigate and investigate and investigate until they run you off. And it's not just me. The early retirements that have occurred under this administration, wow. That should be sending shockwaves through the community, and here's why. Because here's the number one indicator of an unhealthy organization is when you start losing middle management. When you start losing people who've been here 15 to 22, 23, 24 years who are leaving early, that's a sign of an unhealthy and dying organization. These people, and I was in that group, these people are the lifeblood of your organization. They're training the people below them, and they're supporting the people above them that are in their golden years of their career. And when you start losing that middle section, your organization's dying, and that's exactly what's happened. And I was compared to Officer Barrow, who resigned in lieu of termination. How dare you? I retired early because my body, my spirit, my family, we just had enough.
the third internal affairs investigation.
In as many years, yeah. So when you're able to investigate and investigate and investigate and there's no accountability. We talk about transparent, or they talk about transparency and accountability. Where's the accountability when you can just investigate and investigate and investigate over and over and over on baseless allegations? There's only so much a human being can take, and this human had had enough. And so had my family. So I retired early, not because I was afraid of termination. I retired early because I was afraid for my health.
For the people listening and watching, can you take the general public inside of Baton Rouge Police the last few months? Or under this current administration, can you give us a feel of not just you, all officers, or majority of officers right now, when you guys walk in the morning for roll call, is it a fear? Is it a morale is terrible? Is it talk, if you can, give the public an insight into what it is like inside that department, because this is rare to hear from an officer.
Well, you've asked an open-ended question that I could probably speak for hours about. So let me just sum it up. Morale is terrible. If you want to know from the opinion of a person who spent a large portion of his life at the Baton Rouge Police Department, a big reason why crime is the way it is, and yeah, it's a national problem, but no, let's talk. Look, your officers are standing down. Let's just be honest. They go to the calls for service. They answer their calls, but everybody's terrified. Everybody's terrified. If you do anything, you're going to be investigated, fairly or unfairly. Doesn't matter. And officers are terrified of that. You just wouldn't believe the things that I know. And there's just no way for me to sum it up for you. Morale is terrible. Manpower is abysmal. And the fear of unfair and baseless investigations is rampant. Believe me or not believe me, but you asked the question, and I'm telling you, that is absolutely what is occurring inside this department.
If you can say anything to the Baton Rouge Police Chief Murphy Paul, what do you say?
I wouldn't say anything to him.
Same question, Mayor Broom.
I wouldn't say anything to Mayor Broom.
If you can say anything to anybody about where things are in this city police department, what do you say, and to who?
Wake up. Look at what's in front of your face. Look at the rising crime rates. Look at the morale of your officers. You're getting what you voted for. And but here's what I would say to the men and women of the Baton Rouge Police Department. You're heroes, every single one of you. I actually agree with something Chief Murphy Paul said yesterday when he said the actions of the officers that the press conference was held about, specifically the ones who were arrested for felonies, they're not indicative of you. They're not indicative of what you go out and do every day. But I'm going to take it a step further. The actions of this administration, specifically what they've done to me and what they do to others, and you know what I'm talking about because I'm talking to you. I would add to what Chief Murphy Paul said. The actions of this administration also are not reflective of the fine work that you men and women do every day. You're heroes, and I applaud you.
Is there anything else that you want to discuss?
I appreciate the opportunity to address these allegations that were made. They're baseless. They were untrue. They know it, and I'm going to save the rest for the upcoming litigation.
And I guess my last question would be is, I don't know if it's a question or more of a statement that your brothers and sisters in blue cannot speak up. What do you say on their behalf to the public?
Everything I've said today is on their behalf, because trust me, there's nothing more I would rather be doing on September 1st today. Second, there's nothing I would rather be doing more right now than working my food plots and getting ready for dove season to open this weekend. So everything I've said today is on behalf of them, and I know they appreciate it.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? You've got a viewership right now, you have an open platform, and it is the first time we're being able to actually hear, Baton Rouge is being able to hear from an officer, a veteran officer.
Look, that's an open-ended question. It could go on forever. Let's see what comes in the coming days, weeks, and months, and maybe if there's a yearning for it, maybe we'll do this again, and maybe we'll talk about something else, maybe something more specific. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you listening.